Okay, so there's this massive legal storm brewing, and right at the center of it is an app you probably scroll through every single day. We're talking about a huge Supreme Court showdown, pitting the world's most popular social media app against a U.S. law aimed at protecting national security.
And the stakes here are, well, they're absolutely massive. Yeah, that number you're seeing, 170 million. That's how many of us in the United States are on TikTok. It's this enormous community of creators, viewers, and businesses. Just to put it in perspective, last year alone, American users uploaded something like 5.5 billion videos.
But then, the U.S. Congress comes in and passes this pretty unprecedented law. Citing national security concerns, they basically gave TikTok's parent company ByteDance an ultimatum. You either sell the U.S. part of the app, or you face a complete and total ban.
And that really is the heart of it all, isn't it? The one big question that went all the way to the highest court in the country. Can the government actually force a company to sell or ban a massive platform for speech without, stomping all over the First Amendment?
So, before we can really get into the court's decision, we've got to break down what this law actually does. The official name is a mouthful, the Protecting Americans from Foreign Adversary Controlled Applications Act. Yep, that's why everyone just calls it the Divest or Ban Law.
Okay, so here's how it works, broken down into 4 pretty clear steps. First up, the law officially slaps a label on TikTok, calling it a foreign adversary-controlled application. Why? Because its parent company, ByteDance, is based in China. Step 2, that label kicks off a 270-day countdown. ByteDance has that long to sell its U.S. operations. Third, and this is key, the sale has to be a qualified divestiture. That means the new owner must have absolutely zero ties to ByteDance. No sharing the algorithm, no sharing data, nothing. And finally, if that sale doesn't happen in time, the ban kicks in. It becomes illegal for app stores like Apple's or Google's to even offer TikTok for download.
So you might be asking, why go to such extreme lengths? Well, the government's entire case really boils down to one thing. The argument that TikTok, as it stands right now, is a serious threat to U.S. national security.
Now, this slide really gets to the core of the government's fears. They pointed out that TikTok collects just an insane amount of your data. We're not just talking about your location, we're talking about your phone contacts, the actual content of your private messages, and even your keystroke patterns, how you type. Their fear was that this data could be weaponized by China to track government employees, build personal files for blackmail, or even pull off corporate espionage.
And this quote right here, this is the linchpin of the government's whole argument. It's not just that TikTok collects data, it's about where that data could potentially go. The government argued that because of Chinese national security laws, a company like ByteDance could be forced to hand over all of its data to the Chinese government, effectively turning the app into an intelligence-gathering tool.
But, as you can imagine, TikTok and its massive user base had a very different take on all of this. They went straight to court, arguing that this law wasn't really about data security at all. It was a direct, unconstitutional attack on free speech.
So their whole case was built on the First Amendment. They said, look, this divest option is a fantasy. Forcing a sale this complicated is basically impossible, so this is an outright ban. And a ban, they argued, would silence millions of Americans. It would crush their right to create and share, and just as important, everyone else's right to receive all that information. They also said it violates a creator's right to choose their platform, and even TikTok's own free speech right to decide what its algorithm shows people.
So there you have it. 2 heavyweight arguments clashing head-to-head. National security on one side, free speech on the other. And it all lands right in the lap of the Supreme Court. So how on earth did they untangle this mess?
All right, so before the court could even start, they had to pick their rule book. In free speech cases, there are these different levels of scrutiny. Think of them like difficulty settings for the government. Strict scrutiny is the hardest level. The government needs a compelling life-or-death reason for the law, and the law has to be like a surgical scalpel, the absolute least restrictive option. A step down is intermediate scrutiny. There, the government's interest only has to be important, and the law just has to be a good fit, not a sledgehammer to crack a nut.
And the court landed on intermediate scrutiny. And you might be wondering, why that one? Well, it's because they saw the law as content neutral. In the court's eyes, the government wasn't trying to shut down dances or funny videos or political opinions. They were targeting the control a foreign adversary has over the platform and its data. And once they picked that standard, the path was pretty much set. The court's ruling, the law passes the test, it's constitutional.
All right, so let's dig into the why. How did they get there? First, the court basically said, yep, protecting American data from a foreign adversary, that is definitely an important government interest, check.
Second, they decided the law was well-tailored. It wasn't just a blanket ban. It gave TikTok a way out through a sale. And third, and this is so important in cases like this, the court gave a lot of weight, or deference, to what Congress and the executive branch think about national security.
But what about the argument that this law was just unfairly picking on TikTok? Well, the majority opinion had an answer for that. They said the app has special characteristics, specifically that unique combination of its huge scale, its massive data collection, and of course its control by a foreign adversary. And that, they said, justified treating it differently than, say, Facebook or X.
But don't think for a second this was a simple, unanimous slam dunk. There was some serious debate inside the court. Justice Gorsuch, for example, wrote his own opinion where he raised a red flag about another government argument, the idea that China could secretly manipulate the algorithm. He wrote this fantastic line pointing out that what the government calls manipulation, a media platform would just call its First Amendment right to choose what to publish. It shows the court was pretty cautious about that line of reasoning.
So, where does that leave us? The law is good to go. The 270-day clock is officially ticking for TikTok. What does this huge decision actually mean for the future of the internet? Probably the single biggest thing to take away from all this is just how narrowly the court tried to frame its decision. They went out of their way again and again in the opinion to say, hey, this is a very specific, unique situation. You have a designated foreign adversary, you have that adversary's direct control, and you have this incredible collection of sensitive data. They were trying to signal that this wasn't a green light to start regulating every social media company.
And yet, that leaves us with the big, blinking question mark, doesn't it? Even with all that careful, narrow language, did the court accidentally create a roadmap, a playbook even? Could this divest or ban model, wrapped in the justification of national security, be used to go after other tech companies down the line? That is the question that's going to define how we think about tech, free speech, and global politics for a long, long time.